Let me share with you, it's the last Sunday, and thank you for turning up. It's a privilege to have so many on the last Sunday. Just a few words which I feel are appropriate. I've never preached on this at this particular time of year, and so I think it is very appropriate. In John 19:30, we read these words when Jesus breathed his last on the cross. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." Would you like to say with me as we finish 2025, it is finished. It is finished. And with that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. It is finished is in the perfect tense for those who are interested. The Greek word is telestai. And a perfect tense simply means this: that which happened, a definite action which happened in the past, has an effect that continues in the present. In other words, what Jesus did on the cross continues to have an effect upon us today, even on the 28th of December, 2028. And he cried out, "It is finished." So I wonder what your cry is as we finish 2025. What's your cry? I wonder if it's a cry of fulfillment. It might be a cry of victory. It might be a cry of relief. It might be a cry of fear. What's the cry that comes from your lips as you finish 2025? I wonder what it is. Of course, for Jesus, it was a cry of fulfillment for a whole lot of reasons. He finished his mission. I wonder if it's a cry of fulfillment for you. I've finished uni, I've finished high school, I'm going off to Waikato. I wonder if it's a cry, I became a Christian in 2025, or I've grown in 2025, or I know loved ones who've had a baby. We had our first grandchild, which was wonderful. It was born on the 25th of January of this year. I just wonder what it is. Maybe it's a cry of fulfillment. Or maybe it's a cry of relief. Oh, thank goodness 2025 is finished. Thank goodness. Maybe you've experienced a lot of pain in 2025 and it's finally ceased, physical pain we're talking about, or maybe other forms of pain as well. And you're thinking, great, that's left in 2025, I'm going to 2026. It's a cry of relief as we come to the finish of 2025. Or maybe it's a cry of fear. One of the reasons given for the quiet revival going on in England and in New Zealand and in other places of the world is there's a fear of war. There's a fear of war. Maybe you had a diagnosis in 2025 and you don't know what the future holds. So when you say it is finished, it's kind of like, what does the future hold? So it's kind of like a cry of fear. Or maybe you've been aware of some of the headlines in different newspapers around the world, the Epic News, for example, and other news outlets. And there's the growing influence of China in the South Pacific, which is causing a number of people to be very, very concerned. The Russian-Ukraine conflict could easily escalate. The director of US National Intel, Tulsi Gabbard, on the 19th of December 2025 in the Epic News, which is the fourth largest paper in the United States, said Islamism, this is what she said after the Bondi terrorist attack, Islamism is the greatest threat to the freedom and prosperity of the entire world. So maybe when you think of that cry, it is finished, and 2025 finishes, it's a cry of fear because you're not sure about what's going to happen in 2026. There's nothing really magical about the 1st of January. I mean, our lives don't radically change, and many people make all sorts of promises and they kind of sometimes don't happen. So there's nothing really magical about that day, but hope springs eternal. We have this cultural expectation. We have this hope in our hearts. 2026 is going to be a better year. 2026, and I really do hope 2026 is a better year. Really, really do. So as we finish 2025, let me share these words, "It is finished," with you, because they're relevant to us all. "It is finished" is relevant to us all as we finish 2025 and as we enter 2026. The context to those words, first of all, Jesus had suffered a lot of disappointment in his earthly life, and now that was over. There was Peter denying him 3 times. There were the disciples deserting him. So Jesus in his earthly life knew about disappointment, and now it was over. It was finished. Maybe you've been through a few disappointments in 2025. Then, of course, there was rejection. The crowds cried out, "Away with him, crucify him." He knew about rejection, and now it was over in his earthly life. Maybe you've been through some rejection in 2025. Generation Z call it ghosting, and it comes out in other forms and that sort of thing. Maybe you've been through some abandonment and you're struggling with that. Jesus was abandoned. On the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And that was now finished. But maybe you've struggled with some abandonment in 2025. Jesus, when he cried out, "It is finished," all of the weight of the sin and the sin of every person who's ever lived and ever shall live and was living had been put upon him, and that was now over. It is finished. Isaiah 53 verse 5 describes the weight of the sin that was upon Jesus as he was crushed for our iniquities. The weight of his sin crushed him. That word crushed has a whole new meaning for Ruth and me, because it's just over 2 years ago that our brave daughter had her foot crushed badly, and she struggles every day. Her life has changed, and she just had another operation, that sort of thing. And so it means has a whole new meaning to Ruth and me. But maybe you've been struggling with sin in 2025. You can relate to Jesus Christ. Or maybe it's a cry of victory and you knew fulfillment. Jesus fulfilled the mission, and so it was very much a cry of victory. I've finished. It's finished. I've defeated sin. I've defeated death. I've defeated the devil. It's finished. What a relief. What a victory. I'm so glad it's over, period. You know, I think all of us can relate to disappointment, rejection, abandonment, temptation, physical pain, and victory in 2025. We've all experienced it in some way or another. So these words that Jesus cried in the context of those things is really relevant to us as we finish 2025. Then the second thing is this: the outworking of "it is finished" for us as we finish 2025 and as we go into 2026. The first thing is we know what disappointment's like, rejection's like, abandonment, temptation is like. And so because the work of Jesus Christ is finished, there are promises in the scripture that can bring grace into our situations now where when we're going through disappointment, rejection, abandonment, or temptation. One of those verses is Romans 8:28. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. There's another promise that we can apply the grace of God to our struggling with any of these areas. James 1:2-4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And there's another promise we can apply to our lives because of the finished work of Christ on the cross. When we struggle with disappointment, rejection, abandonment, temptation. Let's say this one together. 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. What I love about the finished work of Christ as we finish 2025 and as we face these challenges in 2026, that we can apply that finished work to our lives through His promises, and it will help us overcome these things in 2026. We might feel when one of these experiences comes to us that it's the end, it's over, we can't go on. But the wonderful news is when we apply these promises and other promises because of the finished work of Christ, that we receive grace and we find the end is not an end, it's a beginning. And we find ourselves developing our faith, growing our character, and we discover a strength that we did not know we had before. We're so much stronger than we realize. Then, of course, we come to the difficulty of physical pain. The difficulty of physical pain. Jesus went through that, of course, in a huge way upon the cross. Physical pain. I've seen more pain in those around me in 2025 than I've seen in all the other years of my life put together. It's not been easy because you feel powerless. You feel like, well, I can't do anything. I can't fix it. I can't help the situation. I can pray, I can be encouraging, I can be supportive. So when we talk about pain, and I'm talking about it as a person who hasn't had a lot of physical pain in my life, for whatever reason, I haven't had a lot of physical pain. I've had some. So I speak from the outside. And if you're going through a lot of physical pain, chronic pain, please accept this in the most loving way possible. There is a positive side to pain. There's a positive side to pain. Psalm 119:71 says, "It was good for me to be afflicted so that I might learn your decrees." I have gone through emotional pain, and I've gone through psychological pain, spiritual pain on many, many occasions, but not so much physical pain for whatever reason. So what I say now, I say with the utmost respect and honour and love. Some of us will continue with physical pain in 2026. Some of us will experience perhaps physical pain in 2026. And that's really, really difficult, but it will happen to some of us because we live in a fallen world. We live in a fallen world. Here's the really, really good news. The really, really good news is this. It's difficult, without a doubt, physical pain, when it goes on and on, when it's chronic pain. It's difficult, but we can receive grace. So 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul had received a thorn in the flesh. And 3 times he prayed, "God, please take it away." We do not know exactly what that thorn in the flesh was. Some say migraine, some say something else. And this was God's response to Paul. 2 Corinthians 12:9. "But God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." So Paul then went on to say, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me." Now, when I talk about relating ourselves and our physical pain to Jesus Christ's pain on the cross, that's what I love about Christianity. It's the ultimate answer to how we can bear suffering in this world. No other religion seems to really come near to it from the religions I've looked at. And that's what's so beautiful about our Saviour. He really is a man of suffering, acquainted with grief. And so many of us go through that because we live in a fallen world. And that's where Jesus is not only relevant for afterlife, but he's also very, very relevant for us today. So I think of that, and I say to those going through chronic pain, if you're here today and you're going through it, it's so easy to say it. It's so much harder to apply it. And I want to simply say this, that those who suffer from chronic pain and bear that with the grace of God are probably the most courageous people that I know in the world. They really, really are. Let's move on. We can pray, though. We can pray certain promises when people are going through physical pain. We can pray them. Joel 2:25, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. So, for example, forgive me for making it personal, Sarah, our daughter, just over 2 years, we pray that for her. May the Lord repay. The years the locusts have eaten. And you'll have loved ones too. Here's a good one. Here's a good one. Make us glad for as many years as you've afflicted us. So we can pray those beautiful, beautiful promises. And to a certain measure, those prayers will be answered. And to a certain measure, those things will happen. But they won't be fully realized in this world until heaven. And so we come to the third point, which is simply this. The final outcome of it is finished. The final outcome is this. Revelations 21:4 says this. The final outcome of it is finished, that announcement that Jesus made on the cross. He will wipe every tear from our eyes, and there'll be no more death or mourning or crying, or take this and underline it, or pain. For the old order of things has passed away. What a beautiful, beautiful final outcome. And then we have this. It is finished. The final outcome of this in Revelations 22:14-2, the Bible begins with the tree of life, and because of the fall, the people are excluded from access to the tree of life. The Bible ends in the book of Revelations. Those who believe in Jesus will have right to the tree of life, and its leaves are healing. There'll be perpetual healing, perpetual gladness, perpetual life in heaven. And then, of course, we come to those promises. The promises, Lord, repay the years the locusts have eaten, will be fully realized in heaven because of the finished work of Christ. We'll be glad for eternity. Make us glad for as many years as you've afflicted us, and restore the years the locusts have eaten. We'll find their fulfillment in heaven, and there'll be eternity where there'll be no locusts, and there'll be bliss, and there'll be joy. There's a fourth point I want to bring out, and that is something of the implications of it is finished for us in this life at this time. That beautiful finished work of Christ on the cross. And that is simply this. Leaders are finishers. Paul cried out, I've finished the race. I've finished the race. Leaders are finishers. And if we want to influence people in any way for Christ, then each one of us are called to be a leader in that sense. And so we are to finish what we start. We're to finish it. Jesus Christ cried out on the cross, not it's half done, or I'll come back and try and do it next year. I need to have a break right now. He said, it's finished. It's finished. Leaders are finishers. There's a great sporting legend called Brad Thorne. Brad Thorne, there he is with Richie McCaw. The year is 2011. And Brad Thorne was a legend in that he played for the Broncos, and they won the NFL many, many years in a row with Wayne Bennett, a fabulous coach. And then he switched codes to play for the All Blacks, which was quite incredible. He was in his 30s when he started. Prior to the final of the 2011 World Cup, some of you may remember it, it was in New Zealand, wasn't it? Yeah, because we're all down at the waterfront. It was astonishing. Just absolutely astonishing. 100,000 people down there and everything else. And Brad Thorne said this just prior to the World Cup final, because they knew they were in the final. And he just said this, it was recorded, I just want to finish the business. Just want to finish the job. Well, he was in the team with Richie McCaw. They held on, and it won by 1 point. You see, finishing motivates us to do really well. It gives energy. It gives inspiration. And that, of course, then has a spin-off effect because then we're willing to start something else because we've finished what we've started. May I encourage us, finish whatever we start. Finish it well. Finish it well. And when we finish something, take time to celebrate. Take time to celebrate that which we've finished. Take time to evaluate the journey and learn from it. Every single thing we accomplish, every single thing we finish, we should just sit down and, what did I learn from this? What went really well? I've just done 3 little pages about evaluating our Christmas Eve service. Ruth has done some as well. As you go into 2026, as you finish this year, I have a little notebook and I have about 100 sayings from different people, different verses, which I often read and reflect on. This year I've decided to do a few things differently. So I've thought about 2025, I've thought about the challenges I've faced, I've thought about the temptations I've faced, I've thought about the difficulties, and I'm trying to apply new verses and new things. This is what I learned, and this is what I learned, and this is what I learned. I want to apply that for 2026. Here's something else which Professor Brooks talks about. My wife listens to a number of podcasts of these wonderful people in the United States, and then she gives me, I don't have to listen to it because she tells me all about it. It's wonderful. I've read one of his books though. And he's a professor of happiness. And he goes around the world. He's an amazing guy. He has a faith, a wonderful man. And he talks about this, which Ruth told me about, and I thought that's really important. Finish dividing yourself from others over opinions. Finish it. Finish it. Finish dividing yourself from others over mere opinions. I'm not talking about facts. I'm not talking about that which is primary, core values, core beliefs, but over those things which are secondary, over opinions. It's not worth dividing and destroying relationships over opinions. So let me give you one example. It's Christmas Day, and we have a fairly large family. We don't see them all now because everybody's scattered everywhere. But one nephew was talking to me and I was very, very surprised. He just said, I happen to be a follower of this particular political party. Now, I don't like that particular political party because of their ideology and everything else. But, in fact, there's no real party I fully agree with anyway. So the point is, it's getting really confusing now looking at politics. But I thought to myself, so what? Because the other parties I disagree with on moral grounds for a start anyway. I'm not going to divide myself from my nephew just because he supports another political party. So why divide over my opinion about that party and his opinion over that party? It's not worth it because mine's just an opinion. There are a whole lot more important things to be united over. Then I had another conversation with another nephew, massive guy. You won't get to meet him probably, so I can say this. But he has particular opinions about Charlie Kirk. And I would probably disagree with them. But Charlie Kirk's passed on now. And why should I divide with my nephew over his opinions about Charlie Kirk and my opinions? Let's agree on the things that we can agree on. There's a few other things we all have opinions on. It's amazing. We can have an opinion on all sorts of things. I have this great opinion about how the roads in New Zealand could be fixed, So what? Ruth gets tired of it, okay? It's just not worth it. But we can have opinions over all sorts of things. A really good question to ask is it an opinion or is this a fact that somebody's talking about? If it's a fact, that's different. You've got some data and you can discuss that. But if it's just an opinion and they're wrong, it's just an opinion. And if it's a secondary matter, it doesn't really matter. We have opinions about women in leadership. We have opinions about end times. We have opinions about the way things should be done in church. A really good question to ask again and again, is it an opinion or is it a fact? You'll have opinions about the way things should be done in your family and the way things should be done at school, the way teachers should do. We need to not divide over opinions. Keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is it's finished. The finished work of Jesus Christ is finished. Revelations can be interpreted in 4 ways. Don't think your way is the only way. It is finished. When we focus on the main thing, Jesus Christ's death and resurrection from the dead, it promotes and motivates unity, winning people for Christ, helping the vulnerable, being light and salt. So let's finish dividing over mere opinions. And this message is finished. It's finished. I pray that'll be helpful. Let's stand. Let's stand.